State of Wisconsin versus Terry Nolan, 20 CF 1359. Appearances, please.
Jim Griffin for the state.
Mike Gleason is here on behalf of Terry Nolan, who appears in person.
Mr. Nolan, welcome. And of course, to the attorneys, welcome. Counsel, what do you wish done?
Your Honor, this is here for a plea and sentencing. Mr. Nolan is going to plead guilty to armed robbery party of the crime as charged. The state's going to plead to that. The state's going to recommend prison up to the court. We're free to argue and do argument or something.
Okay. All right. Before I can even ask you what your plea is, Mr. Nolan, I'm required to have an interaction with you, so I'm sure you know certain information. Have you read the underlying criminal complaint and the information that's been filed here that charges you with one count of being a party to armed robbery? Has it been read to you if you haven't read it yourself?
Your Honor, I can say that I did go over the criminal complaint, read it in its entirety to Mr. Nolan about an hour ago in jail. When I asked him if he recalls that, he says he recalls it a little bit.
Mr. Nolan, did you have a good sleep last night when you went to bed? Are you regularly scheduled to take some medicine every day for any condition? Have you taken your medicines for today, sir? What are the medicine that you take each day, including today? Do those medicines help you to get through each day? Now, in this matter, you were charged with one count of being a party to the crime of armed robbery. I want you to understand that, and it's required that I note to you the maximum penalty. Not that that's going to be imposed, but it's required to be stated. And the maximum penalty is a fine of up to $100,000 and imprisonment for not more than 40 years or both. You understand that? And has Mr. Plaisted, have you reviewed that with your client as well?
I did.
All right. Next, I'm also required to review with you the elements of the crime. Now, it's party to armed robbery, but there are certain things that the state must establish beyond a reasonable doubt. In this case, the state must show the following elements beyond a reasonable doubt. First, that you took property from the person or presence of the person who was the owner of the property. You understand that element? And the property that was taken was what?
From a 7-Eleven.
One pack of cigarettes.
You understand that, sir? The second element is that you took that property, those cigarettes, with intent to steal. You understand that element? Okay. The third element is that you acted forcibly. You understand that?
So that's not true.
Okay. Do you understand at least the statement, when you say it's not true, the statement and the element is that you acted with force, with personal force or threat of force, of the use of force. You understand that? Okay.
Judge, this really doesn't sound like we're ready for a guilty plea today. From the defendant's perspective.
Right.
If I may, Your Honor.
Mr. Playstead, sir.
I've been in the same room with Mr. Nolan, we talked from behind the glass. He did have a competency review earlier in this case. I think he was a lot more clear when I talked to him in the jail about an hour. I don't know if the circumstances of the courtroom and all that kind of affected his ability to express himself. It does appear that we need to put this over, during this period of time. Under normal circumstances, Your Honor, I just be able to get together in the room and talk to with somebody with Mr. Nolan's background and the history that's outlined in the competency review. That would be a good thing. But as it is, I can only do what I can do in terms of behind the glass. So I'll try again, and perhaps we can set it.
Certainly, then that seems to make sense. How far forward would you want me to carry it forward? Are you talking a day or two, or a week, or a month? What would you suggest? And I'm going to tell you in advance, I'm inclined, whatever you're going to say, to grant it.
Sure. I think he wants to resolve this sooner rather than later. But I want to make sure that we have the chance to go over things again, so that I'm sure he understands and prepare him for the circumstance in court. It's a little different than it is up in the jail.
Sure.
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it could be tomorrow. I don't know if the state has to re-notify about, as far as victim rights are concerned.
We would not for 7-Eleven, but tomorrow I think we're pretty jammed up in here. Or actually, we're not jammed up at all. We're down tomorrow. That's what I meant.
Yeah.
Close.
But we can schedule it next week.
We can do it next week, sir?
Yeah,
Best day for me,
I'm sorry, let me give you the dates that we're in court.
sure.
We can do it the 13th.
Sure. What time then?
We're at 9:30. 9:30 on August 13th.
Well, I've got two cases before Judge Kynes at the same time.
Okay.
They're both status, but perhaps I can schedule it then. I was at 10.
At 10, we have a plea and sentencing already scheduled. We can set this for 10:45.
Okay, that'd be great.
10:45 a.m.
Yeah, on August 13th. Next
That's great, thanks.
Next court date will be 10:45 on August 13th for plea and sentencing.
All right, that's the adjourned date. Mr. Nolan, between now and then, work closely with your attorney, Mr. Playstead, and we'll see you back here in this courtroom on the 13th at 10:45 in the morning. Good luck to you, sir. Hi.
Okay, I'll be talking.
Can we get Mr. Posey in exchange, please?
This Playstead? I'm actually here. I'm actually here on the 12th and 13th.
Okay, very good.
I'd take care of the matter for you, what you want done,
Very good.
but see what can happen.
I was just explaining to Mr. Griffin, 34 years
everybody make sure their mic, their port mic on? Thank you. State of Wisconsin versus Desmond Posey, 18 CF 6050, appearances please.
The state appears by Emily Zimmel. Good morning.
Darrell Smith appearing with Mr. Posey. We both appear in person. Mr. Posey appears in custody, and we also appear by Zoom. For the court's record, Mr. Posey's mother and younger brother are in the gallery.
All right, so Mr. Posey, good morning and welcome, sir, and welcome to the attorneys and the family members who are present. Counsel both, what is it that should be done here today?
Judge, we are here for a PSI sentencing followed by a plea that was taken back in February. I have reviewed the PSI and I have no additions or corrections.
Same as defense, Judge. We reviewed the PSI. We have no additions or corrections to the pre-sentence report.
All right, thank you. A couple of questions of the attorneys before I have some conversation with Mr. Posey. The underlying charge for which sentencing is to occur is X. What is X?
Armed robbery.
Maximum penalty need to be stated in the record. Is it accurate? 40 years and or $100,000 or both?
Yes, Your Honor. Maximum initial confinement is 25, maximum ES is 15.
And at the time of the change of plea, did the attorneys put on the record some discussions they had regarding recommendations or agreements? Since I wasn't there, if there were such comments, could they be noted now?
Yes, Judge, the state will be recommending 4 years of initial confinement followed by 6 years of extended supervision with the defense free to argue.
That's correct, Your Honor, and that was stated on the record, and Judge Hancher had a plea colloquy with my client, Mr. Posey.
All right, I thank the attorneys for that information. I'll look now to the parties, beginning with the prosecutor. Madam.
Thank you, Judge. This offense dates back to December 22nd, 2018. At about 9:10 in the morning, the victim in this case, the clerk at a Tobacco One store on East Capitol Drive, was working when an individual walked into the store with his hood up and a scarf tied around the lower portion of his face. The clerk asked this individual, later identified as Mr. Posey, to remove his hood. Mr. Posey declined to do so, asked for a box of cigarettes, and as the clerk put them on the counter and started bringing them up, Mr. Posey then pulled out a dark semi-automatic handgun and demanded all of the money from the clerk. The individual who had done this, Mr. Posey, was wearing very distinctive clothing, including a jacket that looked like a letterman's jacket with a camouflage pattern, a checkered scarf, and as I already said, a hood up and a dark backpack with a distinctive pattern as well. The victim attempted to get the register open, was panicking, could not do so. Mr. Posey told the clerk that he had to hurry up, he only had 3 seconds, and began to count down. Victim told the subject that he was scaring him, he could not get the register open, finally was able to, and then pulled the money out and put the money in the register. All the bills from the register were put in the backpack that Mr. Posey had. The victim also noticed that there were a pair of shoes in that backpack as well. The subject, Mr. Posey, demanded that the victim take him to the safe, and whereupon the clerk told him that the owner had taken all the money from the safe, and the subject took the backpack and fled from the store. The clerk immediately called 911. As I said, this happened around 9:10 in the morning, and so police arrived and began to canvass the area. They noticed at a nearby loading dock sort of area, there was a bunch of the distinctive clothing that was worn by the individual was abandoned there, including the backpack, the scarf that was worn, and I believe the boots as well. Officers did locate inside of the backpack a black Glock model semi-automatic handgun with 7 rounds in it and 1 round loaded in the chamber. Officers continued canvassing the area, went to a nearby candy store, and found that an individual matching the description of the person who committed this robbery had gone to that candy store, was acting strange, and asked the clerk at the candy store to call a cab for him. That cab then took him to Bayshore Mall. Officers followed the trail, went to Bayshore Mall, and eventually located Mr. Posey. He was carrying a bag from that candy store, which was a small mom and pop shop. Mr. Posey did have some money on him. He denied having any part in the robbery, claimed that the cash that he had on him was given to him by a friend. We did run DNA in this case, and we found Mr. Posey's DNA on a strip of the scarf that was recovered near the backpack and other clothing articles that were worn by the perpetrator of this armed robbery. This case was set for trial, and on the morning of trial, it was discovered that Mr. Posey did file a letter with the court admitting to his involvement in this case and expressing a bit of remorse for it and expressing a desire to resolve this case. So those are the facts of the case. As in regards to Mr. Posey's character, this is his first criminal conviction, so that does speak well to his character, as the PSI writer notes in the investigation. However, I agree with the writer that when she had stated that this was kind of one heck of a case to start off with in the criminal justice system. This is an armed robbery. It's concerning that someone with no ties to any sort of other criminal problems or legal troubles was able to easily get their hands on a handgun. And this was a real handgun loaded with one in the chamber that he used on the victim. The surveillance footage in this case was very clear, so you were able to kind of get a good look at what happened. And you can tell that the victim was very terrified. He had never been robbed before and working at the store for 2 years. And you can see the fear in just in his actions and what's going on. Obviously, it's concerning that Mr. Posey counted down, really even terrifying the victim even more. So it does not bode well for Mr. Posey that this is his first criminal conviction, as it is so serious. Therefore, I do believe that a period of initial confinement is necessary here, that any rehabilitation does need to be done in a confined setting. And that is why I'm asking for a prison recommendation. Given the seriousness, I don't think anything other than a prison sentence would do here, and anything else would unduly depreciate the seriousness of it. So for those reasons, I would ask that you follow my recommendation of 4 years initial confinement followed by 6 years fixed sentence supervision.
Before I look to Mr. Smith, in terms of prior record, there was possession with intent at age 18 and then obstructing a misdemeanor in 2019.
But those were both two cases that he was arrested for, but he was not prosecuted.
So this is not just a first offense in the adult system. There's no prior record then.
There's no prior record. No, he's no-
Okay, that was helpful to me. Thank you. Now, Attorney Smith.
Thank you, Judge. Judge, I first want to say that Mr. Posey is extremely remorseful for what he did back in December of 18. He regrets it every day. I can tell you that for a fact, Judge. Every time I talk to Mr. Posey, he expresses that regret. And he is truly remorseful. And that remorse just didn't start when he pled guilty. It started early on in our conversations. But most importantly, it started when he submitted a letter to Judge Hancher. Detailed letter, it expressed remorse, it expressed that he prayed every day for the victim and other people. He wished he could take back the hands of time. So I believe it's true remorse. Then he pled guilty without a glitch. Then his conversation with the pre-sentence writer, strictly remorse, no excuses, no blame. Didn't blame anyone, didn't say anybody forced him to do it, didn't blame his upbringing on doing it. He just said, I did it, I'm sorry, I regret it. I'm asking that you do this, Judge. This young man is now a convicted felon. Certainly that's going to be punishment in and of itself for the rest of his life, for years to come. And now he's not going to be able to get expunged. This is going to be on his record for life. He has spent 471 days in custody. 471 days. And that's just without good, if you add good time to it, that's the equivalent of about 625 days. And that's a long, long time for a young man who doesn't have any prior convictions. So I'm asking you to do this, Judge. I'm asking you to stay a prison sentence. I think 3 years of confinement, 3 years of extended supervision is enough time to hang over his head.
6-year prison sentence. I'm asking for 4 years of probation. Instead of further incarceration, I'm asking that you order him to do community service, alcohol and drug evaluation and treatment, absolute sobriety with random urine screens, seek and maintain employment. In any condition time that you deem appropriate, that you stay that as well, to be used at the discretion of the Department of Corrections. If there are minor infractions that will be short of, revocations. He's 24 years old, 11 grades in school. He has goals also, Judge. He wrote down those goals in the letter also to Judge Hampton. He spelled them out, detailed goals like obtain his HSED. He wants to finish school, he wants to finish up, go to college, double major in archaeology and sports medicine. I didn't tell him to write those things down, Judge. He took it upon himself to do it because he has a vision for himself. He has goals, not just talking about it, but he sat down, thought about them, wrote them down, gave them to Judge Hampton, expressed that to me as well. He's got one daughter, one child, age 5, Judge. And I can tell you this, he sincerely loves his daughter. He spends a lot of time with her. Every time I visited him throughout these almost 2 years, every time he's mentioned his daughter. Every time. Talks about how he wants to get out, how he wants to be reunited with her, spend more time with her, be the father that he can be. And he's got other family, Judge. His mother's here in court. She's always here in support of her son Desmond. He's got 2 other younger boys. So Mr. Posey is looked up to by his younger brothers. And Mr. Posey knows that what he did back in December of 18 has not been a good example of how a big brother should act. But he's talked with them. He steered them in the right direction. And he's going to be there for support as well, Judge. His mother doesn't support what he did back in December, but she's very supportive of Mr. Posey doing the right thing, wanting him to go back to school, wanting him to get an education. When he was in high school, Judge, as you can see, Mr. Posey he's a very tall young man. Stands about 6'6", 6'7". He was a basketball star. He was recruited by UW and a few other colleges. Then he started using marijuana, got on the wrong track. That opportunity was lost when he got arrested for this case. But he wants to also maybe go back and be a trainer with Rufus King High School. He's got an opportunity to do that. I hope he can do that because he's got a lot to contribute to this community, Judge. He's been employed. He's worked at Staff Works and labor work. He's worked at Papa John's Pizza, Rocky Rococo's, a place called Upper 90s Pub and Tavern, and other temp services. So Mr. Posey, even at the young age of 24, has worked quite a bit in the community. Residence he lives with his mother and brothers. As you can see from the pre-sentence report, there has been some mental health issues in the past that he struggled with. He sought help. He's reached out. And I hope if that's still a recurring problem, that he's going to reach out and receive services that he deserves and that he needs. Physical health wise, Judge, while this case was pending back in July of 19, he was a victim of a shooting. He was an innocent bystander. He got shot in the knee. And thank God he's still with us. Could have been more serious than what it was. But that was a very traumatic event for him. AODA-wise, Judge, is marijuana. Marijuana. And we know that that drug is still illegal. It causes unproductivity. But Mr. Posey's committed to living a drug-free, sober lifestyle. And he's not blaming drugs on the incident either, Judge. As you can see from the page 13 of the PSI, criminal personality. very important to note on that, Judge, that, and it's important that the pre-sentence writer noted this because we want people to be pro-social, exist productively within our community. It says he got a low likelihood of antisocial personality, then criminal thinking, unlikely to rationalize his criminal behavior. So many people, so many defendants rationalize their criminal behavior, don't take responsibility for it, make excuses. That is totally the opposite of Mr. Posey. He never rationalized his criminal behavior. He never justified it. He never said it was the right thing to do. He told the police why he did it. He was motivated in the wrong way to get his daughter something for Christmas. And you know what? And I told Desmond, all your daughter wants is you, Desmond. That's what she wants. Just your time and your love. Doesn't take money to love a child. Certainly money is in the equation because you got to provide for the child. And then under anger, it says not likely to have problems managing and controlling his anger. And then you go down a little bit under comments, and this is very important, Judge. He does believe that he has been treated fairly in comparison to others. Mr. Posey stated that this situation has humbled him, and when this is over, the judge, DA, and the community will see improvement in me. He stated that he deserves to be in his current situation, meaning confined, because no one deserves to feel threatened. That shows great insight from a young man who's 24. At an age where a lot of young men that age are not very mature, and that's understandable. But that shows great insight on the part of Mr. Posey. What that tells me is that great insight, he's dug deep into himself. He's taken an inventory of his life and his prior behavior, especially back in December. And it is his goal and desire, and I believe him. I sincerely believe that you will never see Desmond Posey in an orange House of Correction outfit with a criminal case. I sincerely believe that. Time will tell. That's why I'm asking for probation. Thank God this incident did result in something more like great bodily harm, because the victim had a gun in the store. He was packing, so to speak. And if he was quick to the draw, Mr. Posey wouldn't be here. Because the victim would have been justified in using that gun. And that's why it's there for him, because people may sometimes come in and try to do things that harm him. And that's exactly what happened. But thank God nobody was physically injured. The emotional harm, we don't dispute that, because an offense like that can cause emotional harm. And the victim was clearly shaken by it from the video, as the state pointed out. The judge, Mr. Posey, as I said before, he spent a lot of time at the House of Corrections. And while he was at the House of Corrections, he did not twiddle his thumbs. He did not make excuses. What he did was take advantage of programming at the House. The fatherhood program. He knew he needed that and could utilize that to make him a better father to his daughter. He completed the No Regrets Religious Spirituality program. He entered into a school program to get his HSED. Unfortunately, because of the health crisis, that halted the schooling at the House of Corrections. So he wasn't able to complete it, but he was involved in it. He sought to be better while he was in custody. Given his lack of prior convictions, Judge, given the fact that I believe there's a very, very low risk for him to reoffend, the punishment, as the state pointed out, incarceration is necessary. And he has been incarcerated for 471 days. And sentencing was put off. Sentencing was scheduled earlier, but due to the health crisis, we had to adjourn it until today. But he has been incarcerated. He has been confined without any opportunity to be released, without any opportunity to work, to provide for his daughter, to be reunited with his family. 471 days equals to about 625 days with good time. That's enough time for punishment right now, I believe. I believe he's ready to be released to the community with supervision. I'm asking for 4 years, Judge, 4 years of supervision. This case has been pending for almost 2 years. No new cases. There was a time when he was released, got rearrested. No new cases. Other than this case, he's a person who hasn't committed any crimes, violent crimes in the past. He's not a violent person. He's never been combative with me. Never had a problem with his mother being combative or aggressive towards her. His true character is what's in this criminal complaint about him being productive, going to school. He's got a little bit further to go to get his HSCD, then he can go to college. And I told him, Judge, I said, Desmond, there are going to be hurdles now. You're a convicted felon. An employer is going to think twice about hiring you. I said, but don't give up, young man. Do not give up. Keep trying. And you're going to land a job somewhere. And then it's going to take time to build up trust again with people who don't know him. And I believe he's going to do that. And he's going to look back at this case in his life and maybe counsel someone else, steer someone else in the right direction. He can do that. He's got the tools to do that. Very articulate, very smart young man and talented. And I'm optimistic that he's going to do positive things and be productive. I'm not going to take too much of your time, Judge. His mother wants to address the court if she can.
Sure. Ma'am, could you state take your time. Could you state your full name?
Florence Torres.
Ms. Torres, now you can make such statement as you wish.
Good morning, Your Honor. I'm just asking, can you give me in on my son Desmond? He was a good person. He didn't get me to shut off his back. We all miss him. We felt like he did his time. And I think, well, I know that he's learned his lesson. His daughter miss him. We all miss him. And I'm just asking you, please just give a little in on my son Desmond.
Thank you for your statement, and it's good that your son heard you say that as well. You can take your seat. Thank you. Mr. Smith?
Yes, Judge. Mr. Posey wants to address the court.
All right, Mr. Posey, you can make such statement now as you wish.
First and foremost, I want to apologize to the victim in this situation. I'm really lost for words. This really was just an act of arrogance. I really took the situation with my emotion and without thinking. I really handled the situation with my emotion. And through the years of me being locked up, it hurt hearing my firstborn, my daughter, recognizing the fact that I'm incarcerated and that I can't visit her in school. It hurt the fact that I know I can be somebody that can be an asset to this community and go and do something this arrogant. I feel like I let my mom down. I feel like I let my brothers down. I really just don't. just want to get home.
Oh, you make a good statement. I do have some questions of you, Mr. Posey. You have one child, and that's a daughter, Camille, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Were you married to mother?
No, Your Honor.
Has paternity been established anywhere in the world?
Yes, Your Honor.
Where was that done?
Paternity?
In other words, where a court says that you, Mr. Posey, are the father, the birth father of Camille.
Yes, Your Honor.
Where did that happen?
It was here in the courthouse.
In Milwaukee?
Yes, sir. Yes, Your Honor.
And in terms of placement, was the child then, Camille, placed with mother or with you or with both?
Mother?
And is the child now, or does the child now reside with her mother?
Yes, she's with her mother.
Okay. And is there an order of child support for you to pay support for the child through the mother?
Yes, Your Honor.
And what is the amount of that support?
To be honest, Your Honor, I'm not sure.
All right. Next on your employment, you work through staffing agencies and also Papa John's and Rocky Rococo's and Upper 90s Tavern. What's the highest wage per hour that you ever earned?
$10 for staff work.
The indication is while the matter was pending before you were in custody, you used marijuana. Have you used other controlled substances besides marijuana?
No, Your Honor.
How about alcohol?
No, Your Honor.
Sir, thank you. And to the attorneys, thank you for your input. Sir, you're to be sentenced on armed robbery at the Tobacco One store. Maximum penalty is 40 years, divided 25 initial confinement, 15 extended supervision, and a fine of up to $100,000. Now, you're a young person, 24 years of age. You have no record of prior convictions, but there were matters in 2018 dealing with possession with intent, and in 2019, an obstruction. However, no charges were issued, so those are not convictions in any way at all. You're in court today on a first matter. The attorneys note the hope that it's the last, but it is also unusual, and the state brought it out, that the very first offense is a very, very serious offense, dealing with a weapon, a threat, and an armed robbery. In terms of your education, how far did you actually complete in school? Not the pending either GED or HSED, but how far did you go in school?
The 11th grade.
Did you complete the 11th grade or did you complete the 10th and drop out in the 11th?
Yes, I completed the 10th and dropped out.
All right. Now you're not married, you have one child, Camille. She's age 5. Camille resides with her mother. Paternity has been established. You also have strong support from your own mother, who's here in court today. She made a number of statements, but the one that resonates with me is her belief that you've learned your lesson. Now, I guess the only one who's going to know if that's true or not is going to be you in terms of your future conduct. I guess no matter what we do, the strength of a mother's love, no matter what we do, but you let a lot of people down, not just your daughter, and you've raised your daughter over time, kind of almost as an excuse. But your mother is standing up for you now, knowing that you have committed the offense, but it's her belief that you've learned your lesson and will move on in a productive way. Your employment record for a 24-year-old man, never earned more than $10 an hour. You've had a number of jobs, staffing agencies, about $9.50 an hour, but then Papa John's, Rocky Rococo's, and then the Upper 90s Tavern. Clearly, there's a need for you as an adult to ultimately get a job in a field that you find appropriate, and then to earn money for yourself, for your family, and to carry on and do the things you want to do in your own life, not by taking from others, but by earning through your own effort. And certainly you have to earn more than $10 an hour. And part of that may be to have the credentials in terms of education, whether it's your GED, HSED, and if you do go on to college, whether community college or university, whatever is your choice, coupled with effort and sweat to accomplish that result, as opposed to being the first one to quit because you just can't do it, you say you give up. But if you persevere, hopefully you'd have credentials that would allow an employer to pay you appropriately. So you could go on in your life and have resources for yourself and your child. Your demeanor in court has been very appropriate. There is an indication of past use of marijuana, THC. In the pre-sentence report, it's very thorough, but I know that they don't make a specific recommendation. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. In this one, they don't, but they point out a number of factors that allows the attorneys in the court to make conclusions as to what should occur. Now, the offense here is one that relates to both person and property. The person at the other end of the gun was in fear of his life. Now, maybe to get a sense of that fear, you love your mom, you love your daughter. You wouldn't want somebody to point a gun at either of them, say a Sandy Hook situation or whatever. But the person who was at the other end of your actions, maybe that person will get over that experience. Maybe that person will never get over that experience and the fear that it caused in that person's life. That was serious, not to be marginalized. It's aggravated again because the gun in question, when it was found, had a loaded round in the chamber. And the responsibility that goes to you is total, and in your favor, you've accepted responsibility for your own actions. You haven't avoided or rationalized what occurred or blamed it on others. Now, the public has a right to be safe. That includes you, includes the person at the other end of the gun. I think the initials were HH Hotel J. That person, your daughter, includes everybody. But for the rights to have meaning, they have to truly include all of us. I'm required as a matter of law to address as well your own rehabilitation needs and the gravity of the offense involved here, again, a serious felony offense, and the impact that it had on the victim. I note that the report indicates a medium risk in terms of reoffending in the pre-sentence report, and a statement that the author believes that the remorse that you've expressed is real as opposed to feigned or pretended. Aggravating factor here, the victim was terrified very justly. Mitigating factors, you've already served 471 days. That's about 15 months. So say if you were sentenced to prison at 15 months, you've already served 15 months in custody at the House of Corrections. Further mitigation, you have no prior record. And during your time at the House of Corrections, you appropriately used at least some of that time in terms of schooling to the extent it was offered and courses that were offered at that facility. Now, given all the foregoing, the court is going to act as follows. I'm going to take, in terms of the structure of the sentence, I'm going to impose and stay a sentence and follow that sentence with probation. The strongest factor in imposing and staying is that you have already served, at least in my judgment, the 471 days. I find that here, such a structured sentence is necessary to protect the public from further criminal behavior, and a sentence to, say, a withheld sentence without using an imposed and stayed approach would unduly depreciate the seriousness of the offense. Given all the foregoing, it's the order of the court, as and for this offense, that you be committed to the Department of Corrections for the state of Wisconsin for a period of initial confinement of 3 years. Against that initial confinement, you're to receive credit for 471 days already served. Counsel, in that regard, Mr. Smith, you're to file a form unless you've done so already, indicating that, and that should be provided to our clerk. Thank you. That's to be followed by a period of extended supervision of 3 years. Total sentence then of 6 years. That sentence now imposed is ordered stayed and in lieu thereof you're to be placed on supervision for a period of 4 years. Conditions of your supervision are as follows. Court's going to utilize a period of conditional days of 30 days to be used by the agent if the agent feels it's appropriate as opposed to revocation. In review, is there any restitution called for? Okay, that hasn't been, otherwise I'd certainly give that. I'm not imposing a fine. I find you don't have an ability to pay and that'd be inappropriate. However, you are to pay the court costs associated with this matter and all mandatory state surcharges that are ordered as a matter of law. In that regard, once you are released, after you've been released and are out for a total of 60 days, you're to pay those mandatory costs and surcharges at the rate of $40 a month. Today being the 6th day of August, the first payment would be due on 4 November and the 4th of each month thereafter in the amount of $40 until those sums are paid in full. Do you understand that?
Yes, ma'am.
Counseling is to occur as the agent deems appropriate. Certainly, it's to include alcohol and drug assessment and a mandatory follow-through on all recommendations. And during the period of your supervision, there's to be absolute sobriety. There's to be monitoring of that sobriety as well through random UAs and other means as the agent would find appropriate. I want the agent to double check that paternity has been established. I accept what you said that it is, and you love your daughter, but I want to be sure that actually there's been an order made that has determined that you, Mr. Posey, are in fact the birth father of the child, Camille. Next, you're to be employed on a full-time basis. How do you go about getting a job, Mr. Posey? What are the specific acts you undertake to get a job?
As soon as I get out, that's my first motive, is to get a job.
Okay, now you're out. Today is a Thursday, tomorrow's Friday, then Saturday, then Sunday, then Monday, Tuesday. What are you going to do to get a job?
Basically, the second I'm out, I'm gonna start off with a temp service. I know it's gonna take time. I'm gonna just keep trying. I realize that my time out is more valuable than my time in.
Okay, now you're giving me some stuff. So you're going to work through a temp agency. How about your own efforts to get a job? Are you going to go knock on doors and see if somebody will hire you?
With all due respect, if that's what it takes, man,
What time do you get up in the day?
I really get up early, around 7 in the morning,
And then what time are you going to be out getting a job?
7 in the morning.
Okay. You know, sometimes our actions set us up for either success or failure. Everybody in Milwaukee who's working is up at 5 in the morning. Are you able to be up at 5 in the morning?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you able to be out of your house at 5:30 or 6 and knock on doors to try to get a legitimate job without a gun?
Yes, ma'am.
And what if the first 25 people say you're not hired? What are you going to do?
I'm gonna keep trying, man.
Yeah, you're not going to be the first to give up and quit. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And you're not going to use excuses about your daughter or your mother or anybody else. You're going to take responsibility to get a job, a legitimate job. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Your attorney has recommended that you be engaged in, and I'm going to follow this recommendation, you're to do 40 hours of community service at the rate of at least 5 hours a month, beginning with the month of November. You may never possess a firearm in your entire life. You understand that?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, other people have a right to possess a weapon, but you can't even live at a house where someone else legitimately possesses a weapon. Do you understand that?
Yes, ma'am.
You're to have no contact with the individual victim, HHG, or with the facility or the store, Tobacco One store, ever. You understand that?
Yes, ma'am.
You are not eligible to vote until your civil rights have been restored. And I'll go to both attorneys because sometimes I'm totally miss some matters. Madam Prosecutor, excuse me, I'm not ready for you yet. I'm gonna go first to District Attorney. Madam Prosecutor, are there other conditions you want imposed? I understand the structure you initially suggested, but given the approach I've taken, are there other things you want done?
No, Judge.
Now, Attorney Smith, didn't mean to cut you off,
Sorry,
sir.
Judge. Okay. Is he eligible for the boot camp or the substance abuse / ERP?
In the sentence, yes.
Thank you. No other request, Judge.
And counsel, you'll take care of appellate matters. All right. It isn't a matter of luck now in your case, Mr. Posey. It's how you exercise your own free will, not just on the bright sunny days when everything's going your way, but even when you get some reversals. Are you going to stick to the commitment you've made, or are you going to take an approach as you did with this incident here? I hope you make the right choice, but it's not luck. It's a decision that you make. Good luck to you, sir.
So as far as the eligibility for the county first or substance abuse program, is that immediate on the impulsive sentence, or is there a period of time?
You know, under the existing rules, I think the department requires so much time be served, but those rules could change. So the approach I've taken is I create eligibility under the rules of the department. And if they lessen the period or extend it, those requirements would have to be adhered to. Be sure I do this right. And if I didn't, I'm glad to do whatever you tell me.
Yes, okay.
Do we have another one here now?
Yeah, we have one more.
Oh, my heavens.
Yes, one moment.
Thank you.
Client.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. There you go. Package.